Okay, I'll start if everybody's ready. So I'm Morgan Siegel. I'm the 8th grade counselor. I will be moving up with the kids next year to the high school. We also have Kristen Dunning on. She is one of our high school counselors.
Hi.
And our department chair as well. And then Tabitha Duffy is on as well, and she is on special assignment overseeing a lot of the scheduling. So anything that you guys have seen on the high school website, she's been putting all of that information up. So if there are any technical issues with kids' schedules, she's been handling that. So her and I and Kristen have been talking a lot recently. So we kind of want to give you guys an overview of what your children are going to be experiencing tomorrow, what information they're going to receive tomorrow, and then what tonight's for. So tomorrow, all of our high school counselors will be Zooming into your children's social studies classes. So whether they're in person tomorrow or at home, they'll see them through Zoom, and they're going to kind of take them through like what a typical day in high school looks like. They're going to explain the block scheduling, the 4 classes in the fall, the 4 classes in the spring, with 80-minute periods and a 40-minute lunch. They'll learn that every class in general is a half a year. In 9th grade, English is a full year, but everything else is a half a year. In addition, in 9th grade, there aren't really many options. They have one room for an elective. And so the high school counselors will show them how to go into Power School and how to choose their top 3 electives. They will only get one, but they're going to pick their top 3. And they will be able to see their choices by looking at the Silver Guide, which is on the high school website. And it has all the options for our 9th graders. The electives will say if a 9th grader can take it. It'll also say if there are any prerequisites. So if there are courses that they've had to take prior to taking that class. So they'll put those 3 options in. They will have from tomorrow until next Friday to submit their 3 top choices. So it's due by Friday, March 19th at 8 a.m., which is when the system will be locked. And tomorrow they'll also be able to see what they were recommended for. So students would either be recommended for honors classes or college prep classes, which is our standard class, and they'll be able to see that. Kristen, do you want me to just briefly talk about what to do if they, see those recommendations and they'd like to make that change?
Sure.
Okay, so if they see, they've been recommended for a course and they're not necessarily happy with the level that they were recommended for, the first step would be to go and talk to their content area teacher and see if they'd be willing to change that recommendation. If they're not, then they can speak to you and then they can come get a waiver form for me. The waiver form, you'll sign off and you say that you approve that they're going to override their teacher's recommendation. It's not something that we recommend, but because what happens if they do override our recommendation, and let's say they were recommended for college prep English and they move into honors English, they go into honors English next year and it's a real challenge for them. They do have to stay in it for the entire year until 10th grade. So we do really recommend that the students either keep with what the teacher recommended or go and talk to their teacher about changing the recommendation prior to overriding it.
And just, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that conversation can include the student, the parent, the teacher, Morgan, that can include a bunch of people, so that everybody gets the full understanding of what the expectations are for the difference between the courses in different levels, and where the student is now and why that recommendation was made a certain way. Yeah. We can all kind of have that conversation before either a waiver form is signed or a student decides to opt up or down.
Yep. Thank you. And then, so the counselors will introduce Power School and this process to them tomorrow, but they still may want to take next week. Your child still may want to take next week to, look over the electives, look through the Silver Guide, and then put the 3 electives in. So what we're really asking for families is to help your child make sure that everything is in by next Friday at 8 a.m. tonight we're really here just to answer some of your questions. We got a few questions in advance that we can talk about that people already submitted. And then if you put your question in the chat box, Tabitha's going to monitor the chat box and we'll try to get through as many questions as you guys have. Tabitha and Kristen, is there anything else that I left out that you think I should talk about before we go to the questions?
The only thing I would say is just for people to keep in mind that now is a good time to ask questions about fifth block music or any music programs if you have questions about music programs.
Okay.
And I wanted
Tabitha, anything else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so that it's clear, if you have questions during the process of registration, if you're trying to register for courses or your student is trying to register for courses and you have sort of a technical issue, you think a course should be available and they're not able to click on it, or there's a recommendation that has been made an error or something like that, you'd want to contact me. But if you have a question about the actual academic program, then you want to direct those questions to Morgan. And she can always forward, if you're not sure, you can go to Morgan first and she can forward the more technical questions to me, but I'll be the one at the high school fixing those sort of like, strange little idiosyncrasies that come up as you're registering for courses.
The kids are also supposed to have 8 credits total in it, plus any music courses during fifth block. So if they don't have 8 credits total, then they're missing something on their schedule.
And you can see that, you can see the number of courses that are requested. Requested just sort of means that's how we say that the student is asking for it to be on their schedule next year. As you put courses in, or as the students put courses in on the portal, the number at the bottom left of that little box will change. So it'll say currently requesting 3 credits. So that's how you know that you're missing something from the academic program, that you have to add more requests in for.
We'll show the kids that tomorrow.
Tabitha, somebody asked if there's a way to change the courses after March 19th.
Yes. So after the course registration window closes, schedule changes at that point will have to be made at the counselor level or at the administrative level. So if that happens, you'd want to forward that question or that change to Morgan, and then we can make it on our end. Students will not actually be able to make changes on their own at that point, but we can get them made in the system. Kristen, you're about to say something.
Yeah, I just want to say, that like please take the time this week to be very thoughtful with your student about your course schedule requests, because we're not encouraging people to then go, oh, I'll just put something in there and then change it later. There are, I don't know how many students are in the 8th grade, hundreds. And we really do need to get the scheduling process underway. And once those are all kind of dumped into the computer system, it becomes much more challenging to change the schedules. And at a certain point, it will not be possible to change the schedule request. So be very thoughtful and deliberate about what the requests are. So obviously, if there's a mistake or there's a misunderstanding, we want to be flexible and work with everybody. But ask questions ahead of time, rather than just kind of put something in as a placeholder.
Right. And just to add to what Kristen is saying, we use these, we use the numbers that come from the registration process that your students are going to do next week to determine the number of sections that we need, to determine which courses are going to run when. So while it's possible, like Kristen's saying, to make changes later for extenuating circumstances, that will be limited later on by the availability of the courses and by other factors that play into the student's schedule. So having these requests be as accurate as possible, and making sure that students select, for example, alternate electives that they're actually willing to take as opposed to like placeholder electives is really important, because the changes later will be made based on availability, and the requests that are made next week are more likely to actually end up on the student's schedule.
So Kristen, one of the questions that we got in advance was about AP courses and how that affects colleges.
Well, what do you mean? I'm sorry. How do AP courses affect colleges?
So meaning, like, do colleges accept the AP courses? Okay. Credits?
Some colleges accept AP courses as college credit and some do not. And different colleges have different rules about what they accept and what they don't. And that's really quite individual. Now, I will say fewer and fewer do accept AP credit as college courses, mostly because they want people to pay for students to take their own classes. But some do, and many do. Often you have to achieve a certain score. So AP exams are scored 1 through 5. And generally you have to get a 3, 4, or a 5 in order to earn college credit on exams. So the example I'll give is where my son goes to college. He took a couple of AP classes, and one of the classes he took, he did quite well in the exam, and they don't accept that particular class for AP credit. He was very frustrated. But another one they do, and that's very helpful. One of the AP classes that can be that kids are often interested in is foreign language, because sometimes that waives them out of a foreign language requirement in college. But sometimes it absolutely does not. It really depends on the college. And as 9th graders, I would not be expecting these guys to be thinking about where they're going to apply to college and whether the college accepts AP credit and how that will affect where they apply to college. I think I answered the question, but I might not have.
There are a couple of questions in the chat sort of about like the sequencing, scheduling, timing, and that kind of thing. One of the questions that I see is, do students get to, I'm kind of scrolling now. So do students get to decide what they pick or what they take in each semester, or are the requests just kind of put into the system?
Right.
And then like they fall where they fall. So
okay. Yeah, I can explain that. So
Okay.
So the courses are kind of thrown into the computer at first, but we do try to have a balanced schedule. So for 9th grade, they're going to have 5 academic classes, but English is a full year. Then they'll have health and PE, and they'll have 1 elective. And so what we do try to do is make sure that the health and PE is 1 semester and the elective is the other semester, so that they have 3 academics in the fall and 3 academics in the spring. That is something we have to do by hand. So I do normally go in over the summer and try to make sure that they have a balanced schedule, but they don't get to pick if they have something in the fall or the spring.
The next related question that I saw here is there a first come, first served aspect to registering for electives? For example, will students have,
right.
Will they be getting an advantage of some kind if they register really quickly?
No, so as long as it's in by March 19th, you know, it's the same as if they submit it the 13th or the 12th, as long as it's in by the 19th.
Okay, and then there was another one that was similar.
Somebody said, will they be continuing in the same foreign language they had in the middle school? They do have the option to continue with the foreign language that they were taking at the middle school, or they do have the option to switch. So if they do want to switch, they have to communicate that to their foreign language teacher, because right now they're putting in the same language that they're taking. So if they choose to switch, they need to let their teacher know. If they're starting brand new, they're going to start at level 1. If they've taken the same world language for 3 years at the middle school and done well, they're going to be recommended for level 2 instead of level 1.
Tabitha, do you want to just start going through the questions and putting them out there, and Morgan and I will field them?
Yeah.
There was one question, Kristen, that was submitted earlier that said, you know, what's better, a C in an honors course versus an A in a college prep course?
So
as far as like what colleges would prefer to see.
So we get that question all the time, and the answer is often unsatisfying to people, because that's a very individualized answer. And it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the student and the class and the family. It depends on people's tolerance for C's. And my first question is, why is the student getting the grade that student is getting? You know, our goal is for students to be challenging themselves in the most rigorous level of the curriculum that is appropriate for them. And so, do colleges pay attention to grades and GPAs on transcripts? Yes, they do. But and do they pay attention to what level of a course a student is taking? Yes, they absolutely do. There are very few colleges who just look at a GPA. That's not really a thing that happens that much anymore. I would be more concerned about why a student was maybe not achieving at a slightly higher level in a course, and what can we do to support that student maybe to be boosting performance a little bit. And it's such an individual question that I couldn't possibly answer it in a blanket way for everybody. Like I said, it's an unsatisfying answer for people.
And one other question, Tabitha, that we got. If your student is not currently at the middle school, but they'll be new to the high school next year, the first step would be to register with Derek Clements in our registrar's office. And then if you want to email me after you've done that, we can set up a time to talk. As far as scheduling, it will be different because we kind of need to figure out what your child's already taken at the school that they're currently at. So it'll be a different process than what it is for our current students.
I just wanted to take a quick second to sort of like show you guys what resources are available on the website, because some of the questions that are coming through in the chat are questions that are answered in resources that are on the page that we compiled. So give me 1 second and I'm going to share. So if we're looking at the, you can get to this page by going to www.wssd.org/course registration. And there's a section that says current 8th graders. And on this page, if you scroll a little bit, there's a PDF here that's embedded that you can also download and print that has the whole timeline. And then if you scroll down, you'll see some frequently asked questions. These were the ones that we sort of, we got from the teachers. We hear a lot from the students. So I put these in here. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the link that students use to register. It'll have information about resetting passwords and what they use to log in. And then it has sort of like step-by-step with pictures for what you do for each stage of the process, down to explaining what the registration screen looks like. We also have a presentation recorded by Dr. Hilden that kind of goes through like a big zoomed out overview of how things work at the high school.
During the next few slides,
sorry, he's going to start talking. We have a copy of the Silver Guide on here as well. Some videos that describe our electives that were posted by teachers. And then there's a video here that I recorded going through the whole registration process from start to finish, sort of with a pretend student that we have in Power School with a fake schedule. So you can kind of see that whole process in action. I did see one question about whether students can register for their courses using their parent portal, using the parents portal login. You can do that and it will work just fine. But if the student wants to go through their own login, the link is just a little bit different than the one that we use for checking grades and like sort of normal Power School operations. But all of that information is on the website.
And there's a link to that portal on that website.
Yeah, there's a link to the portal. There are lists of electives. There's tons of resources there. Just if you sort of have like general overview questions about the process, that's where I would start.
Okay, so read me some questions.
Someone asked how many 9th graders are there? We currently have about 300 kids in the grade. And then typically, Kristen, we get like 15 to 20 new kids?
Yeah, I mean, last year we got about 25. I mean, it changes every year. There are a lot of houses for sale in the district right now, and they're going really quickly. And they're going for over asking. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had 30 new kids in the 9th grade.
But we're at about 300 now. How big are the class sizes at the high school?
The class sizes at the high school range from right now about, depending on the level of the class, but I would say on average, they range from about 18 to 27.
Someone's asking, yes, they are registering for classes for the full year, but would they have the opportunity to change their minds after the first semester of 9th grade?
They do not have the opportunity to change their minds after the first semester. So if you have questions about where go with that, for the whole year, now's the time to ask. Now, so let's talk about the 9th grade schedules in total for a second. A 9th grader at Strathaven High School has 8 blocks to work with, 4 in the fall and 4 in the spring. 2 of those blocks are taken up by English 9. 1 of those blocks is taken up by their American history class. 1 of those blocks is taken up by environmental science. 1 of those blocks is taken up by health and PE 1. 1 of those blocks is going to be taken up by a math class. And 1 of those blocks most typically is taken up by a foreign language. That's 7, which leaves that student with 1 block to choose an elective. So there isn't really a whole lot of opportunity at the semester for somebody to decide they're going to change something. I mean, so if they've thoughtfully selected an elective, the only thing that they would possibly be changing is that elective, because the other courses are all required. For a student who has a learning center, they're not taking a foreign language and they're not taking that elective. So they've got 2 learning centers. So they're not changing anything because all of those courses are required in the freshman year. Their sophomore year, they've got only 1 semester of English, although they have health and PE too, but so they still have that elective that they've got 2 electives that they're working with. And then their junior year, they don't have health and PE at all. And so they've got another elective to work with. And so they get more electives every year that they can start to kind of shuffle pieces of that puzzle around. But their freshman year, they really don't have a whole lot to play with.
Kristen, someone's asking how 5th block works and like what's offered during 5th block.
So 5th block is a really important part of our schedule. 5th block is used for 4-credit music programs, for band, chorus, orchestra, for band front, all of those things, which students will have the opportunity to sign up for during registration. And it's also the time when many clubs meet, and it's the time when students are free to meet with their teachers for extra help or just to check in. And we make a big point of emphasizing to the students that at the high school, it's not just for extra help. Students who are consistently doing very well are most often found in the classrooms meeting with their teachers for extra help and for checking in, having teachers review papers, test prep during 5th block. There is a bus at the end of the day at 2:15, there's a bus at 3:05, and then there are buses after sports. Sports don't start until after 3 o'clock, so students are available during that 5th block time. And students who participate in 5th block music don't have it every day, so they're free 5th block to see teachers, but they also can be, with a note from a teacher, can be excused from 5th block music to meet with their teachers. And you don't have to meet with a teacher the entire time. You can go check in with a teacher and then go continue on with what else you were doing during 5th block, either music or a club. Is there an art club? That just popped up. I'm going to answer that really quickly. Yes, there's a very, very popular art club.
So 2 questions about electives.
Go ahead.
I'm going to pop in here with. So
yeah.
Will they rank their 3 elective sections or just put in 3 and hope for the best is the first one. And the second one is, are 9th graders only allowed to take electives designated for grade 9, or are there ever exceptions made to take ones designated for 10 to 12?
So not the electives, students put in their first choice elective in there with their 8 credits that they're selecting, and then they choose 2 alternates. Their first choice elective is their first choice elective. And then the 2 alternates, there is no order of preference. They're just 2 alternates. And really, if they don't get their first choice elective, it's going to be whichever one fits in their schedule is going to be the alternate that they get. We do our best, but really a lot of it comes down to what fits in the schedule and where there's space. The second question was, what was the second question?
Can they take, are there ever exceptions to the grade level designated in the Silver Guide?
No. I mean, that sounds really harsh. Are there ever exceptions? I mean, who am I to say like, no, never say never, I guess, in this universe. But we, the curriculum office of the district and the teachers spend a lot of time developing the curriculum for courses based on appropriate developmental levels. And they've made these determinations pretty carefully, and they've been kind of board approved who goes into what courses, and they're kind of determined to be appropriate for certain grade levels.
Someone asked if you can take a second language as an elective. So as they get older, they'll have more spots to add in electives. And yes, they could add in a second language. So they wouldn't have room to do it this year, but if a student wanted to pick up another language, they could.
I'm gonna, somebody asked if I could share the screen again with the sample schedule. I sort of shared this for a minute when Kristen was talking about the number of electives and how they increase. We have in the presentation that's posted on the website from Dr. Hilden, this is the sample schedule of 9th grade student, sort of mapping out with what Kristen was talking about a couple minutes ago with the required courses plugged in there. The elective is yellow. We included 5th block on here, and we included activities for each semester.
So can I say something about this?
Yeah.
So just so you know, like this is not necessarily the division of how it's going to go, right? I mean,
right.
As Morgan said, we try to balance it as best we can. Can I explain about lunch? So lunch, the third, we have first block is 7:35 to 9. Second block is 9:05 to 10:25. Third block is 10:25 until 12:40 or 12:35. That's extra long. Students are assigned either A lunch, B lunch, or C lunch. If they have A lunch, they go right from second block to lunch. And then after, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, they go to their third block class for 80 minutes. If they have B lunch, as bizarre as this sounds, it does work, I promise. They go from second block to class for 40 minutes, then they leave their class, they go to lunch for 40 minutes, and then they leave lunch and go and finish the final 40 minutes of their third block class. C lunch, as I'm sure you have now gleaned, they go from second block to their third block class for 80 minutes, and then they leave there, go to lunch for 40 minutes, and then go to their fourth block class. I'm going to tell you a very important piece of information, which is that in about the second week of August, when the students get their schedules, all of their schedules will either not have a lunch on it, or they will all say a lunch. And all of your kids are going to go crazy thinking that they all have the same lunch with all of their friends. They do not. And then when they get their actual lunches the first day of school, they're going to call you and say, you have to call the school and get my lunch changed because I cannot go to high school because there's no one in my lunch for me to sit with. One, do not call the high school because we're not going to change the lunches. Two, there are 850 kids for your kid to sit with in the cafeteria. They're going to be fine. This is a normal part of adolescent development. We're going to make sure your kid is fine. And really and truly, we're not going to change their lunch. So it's just an exercise in frustration for all of us. We're going to make it all
in addition to what Kristen said, they could have A lunch in the fall and B lunch in the spring. So the only way that you know for sure that they have the same lunch all year round is if they happen to have English 9, right. And if they have English 9 third block, then they'll have the same lunch the whole year because English is a full year. But if third block, fall is one class and spring is another, their lunches may change. They may have B lunch in the fall and C lunch in the spring. It is mixed, so they will be with all grades in the cafeteria. So that's definitely, one of the hardest things I think for our students.
They get used to it within a couple of weeks and all is fine.
Yes. Kristen, somebody asked, what's the advantage to testing out of environmental science if they are recommended for honors? You want me to go, or you want to answer it?
Well, I mean, my answer, I don't know that there is an advantage to testing out of environmental science if they're recommended for honors. I mean, you know, our science department feels very strongly that that's an important class in our scope and sequence. There's information and content in that class that's referenced and kind of it scaffolds to what's in biology. Some of that information is on the biology keystone, although, I mean, you know, between you, me, and the lamppost, I don't care so much about that. But, you know, I mean, the curriculum of that class is deemed relevant and important. You know, I mean, I have kind of my personal beliefs about why environmental science is critical. But it's part of the curriculum of Strathaven High School. I mean, that's my answer.
But we do want everybody to know that though the high school and the science department at the high school does not recommend it, it is an option that is available to the students.
For them to attempt to test out of it.
Correct. And if they do want to attempt to test out of it, they'll come and see me and we'll go over this with them tomorrow to get a permission slip that you will sign off on. And then they self-study till the first week of June. They come in and they take the environmental science final exam, and they have to score an 85% or higher to skip over it. We typically have maybe 10 students at most who pass out of environmental science. And it is a big time commitment on their part. Once we do get the permission slip back, I will give the students the name of the textbook. We don't provide the textbook, as well as a list of the topics that are covered. So there is not a lot of support, you know, to help them prepare for the exam. Kristen, somebody else asked about separately from electives, are there clubs and when are they available?
So we have a huge number of clubs at the high school. They meet fifth block. Some of them meet after school and at night, but typically they meet during fifth block. And one of the great things about the club situation at the high school is that if a student has a particular interest and there isn't a club, we make it very easy for students to create clubs of their own. There is a list of clubs on the high school website, I think under activities, although I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that at the moment it's probably not completely up to date, just because the club situation this year is pretty compromised. But in general, one of the things I find so extraordinary about Strathaven High School is the degree of engagement and involvement in clubs and activities. Our students are really committed to that.
Someone asked why we're not able to provide the lunches in advance to the students, why it's given to them, you know, right before school starts.
So this is a little bit kind of how the sausage is made question, but lunches are driven by a couple of things. Sorry, my dog just came in the room. By a couple of things. One of them is, so this is like more information that you're going to be annoyed by this answer. So there are some classes that can't have B lunch, right? The health and PE classes can't have B lunch because if they're outside running on the track, they can't come in the middle of that and then have lunch and then go back out and run on the track. Or if they're playing tennis, they can't come in the middle of playing tennis and then come and have lunch and then go back out. The lab science classes can't have B lunch because if they're in the middle of a lab, they can't stop doing a lab, like a chemistry lab, and then go have lunch and then come back to chemicals, right? And the students who are in the vocational technical programs, including the med careers program, have to have a certain lunch, and I'm not remembering off the top of my head if it's A or C, because of their transportation to and from those programs. And so those things are drivers for which classes, whoever's in those classes have to have certain lunches. And it's not until we've kind of hammered down when those classes have to have lunches that the other classes can be kind of slotted in, and it has to all be balanced number of students in the cafeteria at certain times. And that takes a lot of kind of figuring and calculation that the administrators of the building do over the summer. And that is my final answer.
Someone asked about when are the kids Zooming tomorrow. So they'll be hearing from the high school counselors during their social studies class tomorrow.
Yes, we are going into all the social studies classes.
Tabitha, I didn't see any other questions unless I'm missing something. Did you see anything else that we didn't address
Somebody
yet?
asked if I could show them what the screen looks like. I can do that if you wanna like scroll up a little bit while I show what the screen looks like.
Do you want me to scroll up? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm gonna show what the registration screen looks like on here. So again, there's a video posted of this, and it kind of goes through the actual process. Because I'm not logged into a student's real account, I can't actually show you more than like what the screen looks like and where the buttons are. But this is going to be when the students log in, they're going to come down here and there's going to be this button that says class registration on the left. And when they click that, this is what they're going to see. Each of these areas is kind of like a different part of the course request that they're going to pick. So at the top, we have core academic courses, and there's a little pencil. It's probably really small on your screens, but when you click this little pencil.
Oh, look, good for you.
What?
It popped right up.
Oh, yeah. So when you click this little pencil, the screen's going to come up where the students actually select their courses. One useful tip is that if you click this alerts header over here, it's going to pull up courses for which your student already has a recommendation. So that means they don't have to go through and like scroll through all of these numbers at the bottom. It'll just kind of put all the ones that they can register for at the top. If a course is able to be chosen, there'll be a little checkbox. Okay, so you'll like actually check these off. We're selecting the academic ones first.
So those are the core classes for which a student has been recommended.
Right. So you're going to check off all the ones. Sometimes like a math teacher might recommend more than one course, or a language teacher might. You want to make sure that the ones that you're selecting are the ones that the student actually wants to take. And then you're going to click OK down here. And when you've done that successfully, there'll be little boxes that pop up here with the course names on it. Then you have another selection for electives and another selection for 5th block music courses. Remember that those ones don't count toward the 8 credits. And then down here on the left is where, again, it's probably tiny, so I apologize, but it's where you see that you're currently requesting whatever number of hours. So if it's not 8, you have to keep adding in the core academic area and this elective area until you get to 8. One other thing you're going to see is that we've already pre-registered the students going into 9th grade for health and PE. It's not going to say 2. This is a 10th grade sample schedule, but that already should be showing up there in the window. Sorry, there. I lost.
Thank you, Tabitha. Somebody asked, will they stay with the same counselor? So all of your students will have me for next year, and then I will take all of the current 8th grade and I will split them up amongst the 4 high school counselors. And then your child will stay with that counselor for 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. Kristen, somebody asked about doubling up in math. Do they need a recommendation from their math teacher, or will the computer sister allow them to register for the extra math class? And then Kristen, will you just talk in general about, our view on doubling in math for 9th grade?
Sure. So they do need a recommendation from the math teacher to double in math. And so that they can put that recommendation in the computer for them. And our best advice is that they have a conversation both with Morgan and with the math teacher about that. So for some kids it's appropriate. And that's completely great. But it's definitely not for everybody. There is this kind of pervasive myth that you have to double. And we hear kids say all the time, oh, you've got to double in math. You've got to double in math. And you don't have to double in math. And it really concerns me when kids feel that there's this pressure to do it when they really don't want to do it, or when it makes them anxious that they have to do something that maybe they're uncomfortable doing. The transition to the high school is a transition, and it is a jump for kids in terms of the expectations of the teachers and the amount of kind of support that they get. I mean, there's a lot of support for sure, but it's high school and not middle school. Their classes are longer, although you do find that the kids really like that. When I talk to ninth graders, they tell me that they love the fact that they have 4 longer classes. But their extracurricular expectations and time gets a little bit more demanding for them. Their homework gets a lot more demanding, and the expectations for their independent work grow kind of exponentially. And the thing that I think they often don't expect, the ninth grade teachers are highly skilled at working with ninth graders and remembering that they are ninth graders who are making a leap from 8th grade. But they are high school teachers and not middle school teachers. And those are different kinds of people, right, who are used to dealing with very different populations. And so I think 8th graders are a little startled when they get to the high school about how much of a jump it can be. And there's also something that comes with being the youngest in the school after having been the oldest in the school that kind of sets them back a little bit on their back foot. And so taking another academic class instead of an elective that might give them a little bit of breathing space, an opportunity for kind of creativity or to do something that's going to have frankly a little bit less homework and fewer tests to study for, is a big decision, and one that should not be entered into lightly or just because they have heard that that's what they're supposed to do. Students at Strathaven High School take 8 credits for 4 years, which is 32 credits. The state graduation requirement is 21 credits. So there's a reason that the high school has this really spectacular reputation for excellence. But we do give the kids room to explore other things. We don't want them to grind themselves into dust from the jump. So for some kids, like I said, it's completely appropriate. And I have had students who are like, I love math. I love math more than anything. I'm really excited to dive into this. But there are other opportunities for them to do other things.
There have been a couple of questions about sort of the impact that our COVID year has had on both students, teachers' placements decisions for students, but also how it's going to impact the expectations from ninth grade teachers for students coming in next year. So I know that that's sort of a really broad question, but I don't know if Kristen or Morgan.
Well, I mean, I'm just one perspective. I mean, how the first part of that question was, can you tell me what the first part of that question was again? I don't want to.
So the one part was about whether teachers have been taking into consideration that this year has sort of been an unusual year when they're making placement decisions. I would
say yes. They have taken that into consideration, but it is much more difficult for them to make recommendations this year than it ever has been. But I do think that they have taken that into consideration.
And I think everything has context. And I think that, things are probably harder for you this year with doing things in a COVID world. I think things are harder for me doing things in a COVID world. Usually we would be having this conversation face to face, and instead I keep having to get up and close the door because my dog keeps pushing in. But so the teachers are one of the things that's been very challenging for teachers in their planning and preparation is that they are having to accommodate for a lot of extra review. And so their anticipation for next year, all systems go, right? We're knocking on all of the wood, is that there will be review. This is the thing that is incredible about kids, is that they are resilient and flexible. And so have some kids really struggled with this learning environment? Of course they have, but they also have really risen to some incredible challenges. And so, has curriculum been adapted, and have teachers been marvelously flexible? I mean, in ways that you can't even I can't wrap my head around. Yes, but there will be review, and there will be kind of an adaptation of how things start at the beginning of the year to make sure people we assess where they're starting from, and they get to where they need to go at the end of the semester or at the end of the year. I mean, that's what you do.
The next question that I see is, when will students and parents know what level of classes their child is recommended for?
Tomorrow.
And
And the signing up for clubs won't happen until the kids start high school.
So there's an activities fair in the fall. There was a virtual activities fair this year, kind of with a video and Flipgrid, but in the fall, all the clubs and activities set up tables in the gym, and all of the freshmen there will be one day when all of the freshmen, their classes will all go through the gym and look at all the tables and learn about all the clubs and activities and get to sign up, and they'll sign up for like 30 of them, and then they'll actually participate in like 2 or 3. But it's very fun and very exciting, and let me tell you, I cannot wait for that stuff to start happening again, because that's kind of the like beating heart of like high school life.
Tabitha, I didn't see anything.
Someone asked about what percentage. So what's sort of like the ratio of students who are in honors classes? I don't know if we have an answer for that, but honors classes compared to college prep classes.
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to say, because I don't want to give the wrong information and then be caught out on that. If you really, you can certainly email me and I can try to find out for you the exact numbers. I will say that we consider the college prep curriculum to be our default curriculum, and the kind of difference between those is that in the honors curriculum, things move at a slightly faster pace, and it's about kind of depth rather than breadth. Students are expected to be a little bit more independent, and certainly they are assessed a little more kind of rigidly and stringently. I mean, the expectations are different. And they are, mostly, like I said, it's about depth rather than breadth. The content is basically the same. They cover the same material. And in most subjects, there can be movement between the two. There's some difficulty going between math and foreign language. But for the most part, people can move between them. And we provide pathways for people to move between them in foreign language and math.
Someone asked about if they put money into an account for lunch. It's the same as it is at the middle school.
It's the exact same. And there's a nutrition tab on the district website where you can get all that information.
But I believe it is the same system, same process as the middle school.
And they can also just bring cash. Although, don't bring a lot of cash to school. That's not a good idea.
What recommendations do we have about how how parents can best support kids during this transition? Anything specific that parents can do to support and collaborate with Strathaven staff and teachers?
That is such a good question. Thank you for asking that question. So, step one, you're here and asking these questions, which I think is wonderful. I think, talking to your kids about what's happening in their classes, I think, is really valuable. If your children are anything like my children, what'd you do in school today? Nothing. Odds are that's not true. My children have the unfortunate situation of going to school where I work. So generally I have some understanding of what's actually happening in their classes. I think going to back to school night and learning about how you can kind of pay attention to what's going on in their classes. I think, one of the things that can be a little bit hard for your transition is learning to have a healthy relationship with the portal, so that you maybe trust but verify. I think if you are somebody who checks the portal on a daily basis, you might need to learn how to step away from that a little bit, because that's not good for anybody. But you know, you want to learn how to engender some independence in your child, but also make sure that they're doing what they need to do and learning how to take responsibility for their own schoolwork. If you have questions about what is going on in the classroom and about your child's participation, or if something just doesn't seem quite right to you, or if they're spending too much time doing homework or too little time doing homework, or you're not seeing work come home, or a kid is saying to you, I don't have any work for that class, or I don't have any tests in that class, email the teacher and say, can you just update me on this? Because this is what I'm seeing. Does this seem right to you? You're the parent. You're providing the food and the clothes. Ask the questions. You know these people better than anybody, and you should find out what's actually going on. Now, like I said, I mean, there's a healthy balance there. And Morgan next year is the person who can, you know, if you're seeing big picture issues and you think things are going sideways quickly, Morgan can kind of consolidate information from all of the teachers and come up with a plan for the whole gang. But by all means, ask questions. I would say, you know, every couple of days sending an email to all the teachers might be a bit excessive, but definitely check in from time to time. I think it's all about kind of healthy communication.
Kristen, if they notice that there's a gap or a mistake in the schedule, or they're missing a block over the summer, who should they contact over the summer to resolve that scheduling issue?
A building administrator, a principal, or an assistant principal. And really and truly, the day the schedules come out. I mean, you're going to have to wait because people can't get back to you right away. Keep that in mind. What's an emergency for you can be fixed, but it's not going to happen right away because it's going to be an emergency for like 50 other people. But you should contact the main office at the high school and say that there's an error in the schedule and you need to see somebody and get that fixed. The counselors don't work over the summer. We're 10-month employees, but there are building administrators who are working, and then we're back at work a week, 10 days before school starts, available to help with that kind of stuff.
Are we assuming that we're returning to a regular schedule in the fall, a regular return to school? I think the answer is yes.
I don't think I would drag myself out of bed if I weren't making that assumption.
I think we are assuming that we're returning to a normal schedule in the fall at this point.
Let's not even put something else out into the universe.
Are there any other parent Zoom meetings for parents prior to September? Would there have been a freshman orientation for parents during non-COVID time? So yeah, we typically do an event like this, but it's in person. It would be in the auditorium at the high school in March, right around this time.
Tabitha, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Morgan, but didn't Dr. Hilden release a video for all the parents?
Yes.
That's one of the things that I pointed out that's on the website, on the registration website. So yes, that's there.
Right. And that was in lieu of his 8th grade parent orientation.
Yeah, but we typically would do this in person.
So there's something that I didn't mention when I was talking about ways that parents can be involved. Participate to the best of your ability in the high school home and school association. They have monthly meetings at the high school. There was one tonight. And that's a really good way to kind of stay in touch with what's happening in the kind of larger community. I would encourage parents to get involved in the both the high school home and school, but also your classes, whoever the parent organizers are for this class.
As far as the kids walking over the bridge and the end of the year celebration and taking a tour of the school, that's all still stuff we're trying to figure out. I do not believe at this point we plan to bring the kids over to the high school to tour the building. However, we are talking about right now with the 8th grade teachers, end of year celebrations, the bridge walking, what we're able to do. So we are planning something. We don't know exactly what it is yet. But as far as tours of the high school, Kristen, I don't believe that's something that we're able to do right now.
That would be way out of my
Yeah.
realm, and I haven't heard anything about it. I mean, you'll know when I know.
Do you guys use Google Classroom at the high school?
Yes,
Okay.
everybody uses Google Classroom.
Okay. So there are no other, I don't believe, there are no other meetings for parents prior to September. Is that correct, Kristen?
I couldn't speak to the summer or the fall, but not as far as I know at this time. There could be other things that arise, but right now I don't believe there's anything else planned. But listen, you're going to have questions, and as questions arise, you can, if they're specific to what's happening with kind of end of year planning and the scheduling, Morgan can certainly help you. If they're more kind of high school centric, you can always get in touch with me or the high school administration. We're happy to kind of walk you through this stuff.
Yeah, so if you have individual questions, you can email me and we can definitely set up a time to talk. If you have individual questions about your child's schedule. Anything else?
I don't think I see another question like in the.
Okay. So we're excited to have your kids come over to the high school. I think, like I said, it's kind of, we're all looking forward to next fall. And your kids get to have, I know that they're not having kind of the 8th grade experience that they perhaps expected they would have, but it sounds like they're doing a great job and they certainly will never forget it. And we will do everything we can to give them the best 9th grade experience that we can provide for them. All right, folks. I hope that you have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for coming. This is a great turnout. We really appreciate it. By all means, reach out if you have any other questions.
Thank you all for doing this.
Of course.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.